So hi everyone, thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kat and I'm the Assistant Director for the Graduate Online Programs here at McGeorge. And I do have a special guest with me today, which is Jamie Taylor, who is currently the California State Senate Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So thank you for joining me, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're going to do Government Law and You, and our webinar is going to discuss how an MSL can benefit public sector professionals. So real quick, so we did our introduction. I already kind of introduced Jamie. And we're going to kind of go through some questions with him that I've prepared for him. Then we're going to do a quick overview of our MSL concentrations, focus a little bit on our government law and policy concentration, what makes our online graduate degrees distinctive, next steps, and then we'll open it up for questions either about the program or for Jamie. And then we'll kind of close out and that'll be it. So like I said, with me is one of our MSL alumni, Jamie Taylor. He works for the California State Senate Director as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Okay, so I have a list of questions for you and I'm just kind of going to ask them and then just, however long your answer is fine. I've got, I think, 8 questions, if that's all right, Jamie.
That's great.
Okay. So first question, could you share with us how your journey in political, community, and legislative affairs led you to pursue your MSL at McGeorge?
Well, thanks again, Kat, for having me. And thanks for asking that question. I think we always have to start with why we care and why we're here. Essentially, what is our rocket fuel in life? And I think going through the McGeorge MSL experience for me in 2014, starting in 2014, was a real game changer. It began with me having to write a personal statement that I was all up in here. I'd known where I'd come from and sort of what my intent was in terms of going back to school and seeking a higher degree. But the real challenge of applying to McGeorge made me really have to focus in on, well, who am I in terms of what do I want to take and take from good and make great, with adding additional skill sets from master's programs such as the MSL program. So when I put a lot of emphasis in that personal statement, and I think it matters for me personally in the work that I do every single day, kind of where I come from and what forged me at an early age in terms of wanting to do public service, community service, and legislative affairs. And so, right away, as I was applying, I was thinking about, well, where did I come from and where do I want to be? And my personal experience is one where I grew up in the Bay Area. My family were entrepreneurs in the restaurateurs in San Francisco in what we call the Fillmore district, also known as the Harlem of the West in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. My grandmother was one of the first women of color to open a nightclub in San Francisco in the late 40s, and she was very successful. But along came redevelopment and displaced many people of color in many communities under the guise of improving blight. And so what happened to the community that I come from is many of the folks, including my family, lost their property to eminent domain. And in doing so, are going through that process even 40 years after it began. 30 years after it began, I should say. I can remember being 10 to 15 years of age and visiting my grandmother, and we weren't doing milk and cookies. We were hanging out at the redevelopment agency, and we were going to city council meetings. And my grandmother was fighting for her legacy and fighting for what she had worked so hard for, and that was stolen from her, stolen legacy in my view. And what I noticed in these political spaces and professional spaces was that there was a language of the law that was being spoken, and my people didn't understand that, and we didn't have the right kind of advocacy. We didn't have the right kind of defense, and so we lost. So that really kind of burned into my mind the importance of protecting one's community and understanding the language of the law and being able to speak with people in power and move them and persuade them. And I saw lots of other people do that, and I was unable to do it myself at a very young age, but I realized this is something that I need to know how to do better. So getting into law school, I was going, or into the MSL program, I should say. I was very clear in my intentions of kind of understanding the language of the law and the rule of law, and getting that confidence to be able to speak with authority based on precedents or legislative intent. And so that really kick-started the next step in my journey, both to McGeorge, and then from that standpoint onto a new role, which allowed me to oversee and manage the Senate Fellows Program. So just as soon as I got into the MSL program and really finished that experience, along came another job opportunity. I was prepared for it. I was confident in my skills, and I had the educational background that the university, Sac State at the time, wanted. So I essentially took away all the no's by getting that higher degree and then working for another university, and as well as sort of preparing myself with all the skill sets needed to be successful moving forward in the new role.
Great. Yeah, thank you. How do you see an MSL degree enhancing the skill set of professionals entering a political and legislative career?
I think it's unparalleled what you'll receive in terms of your legal reasoning skills. You'll be amongst people in a cohort that oftentimes work in and around government environments, and so you'll be sharpening your axe with other people, your legal reasoning skill axe with other people in government spaces, and having discussions about policy from that standpoint. So, but with a strong legal reasoning skill background, research and writing, your verbal communication will take a huge step forward. Conflict resolution, mediation, negotiation. These are just the tip of the iceberg of some of the things that you'll pick up along the way that are very useful anywhere, much less in government, much more in government, I would say. This is part of the standard fare of the things that you do every single day: negotiation and dealing with conflict management is a big part of what we do every day in the legislature. And I would say that the MSL program enhances all of these skill sets, if not helps you start from where you may have a deficiency as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so you touched a little bit on your role as director of the Senate Fellows Program. Reflecting on that, how did the MSL degree inform your approach as leadership and mentorship within that program?
Yeah, I think I've always had a passion for the law, but I think going through McGeorge gave me a passion for justice. So it took it to the next level of understanding how the rule of law can help people. And so I think it's really applicable that you have a passion for justice in any one of the three branches of government in one way or another. You're trying to limit, obstacles in ways or barriers. You're trying to make sure that people have information. You're making sure that everything that you're doing is for the constituent, and you're driven by your passion to do that. And I think that was a big part of my MSL experience, was being around practitioners and professors that were super passionate about the area of law that they taught, and then the people, your classmates were as well. So we'd have really passionate conversations about the law in class, and I think that translates well to working, sort of in government, and specifically during my time kind of helping Senate fellows. I think if you don't have the passion, what keeps you up is understanding, those that you serve. I think it's, if you don't understand them personally, or have, maybe you have empathy and you can put the work in to better understand those you serve. I don't think you can serve people unless you're passionate and you understand their needs. And so I would say passion for justice, if you're passionate about justice and politics, you're passionate about people. And I think that's something that I experienced in the MSL program in the classrooms that I was in with everyone, students, professors alike. I would also say adaptability. Adaptability is something that you gain in an MSL program. You can't not be adaptable when you go through any kind of law school experience. Oftentimes fellows that I work with and many others, it'll be their first time kind of learning new skills and writing in the ways of the legislature, which is very different from, in some ways, academic writing. It's all about the one-page brief and distilling mountains of information into something that's readily available and members can consume at a glance. And that's just a skill set that you don't have to have, but that you'll learn when you come in. But it's taking on those kinds of things, as well as many new assignments, understanding a lot of new policies and acronyms right away, doing things that you've never done before. And I think one of the things that I'm passionate about too is giving leaders the skill sets to adapt and deal with different challenges. And I think great leaders have that. Great leaders understand and relish those challenges. And so that's something that is part of the experience of going through an MSL program, is you're going to be doing a lot of things in terms of your understanding of the law and learning the law for the first time. And it's a very big challenge. So adapting to those challenges makes you a better person. Creativity, I think understanding the rule of law and doing a legal analysis is one thing. And it's also learning how to bring your own personal reasoning skills and experience to the table. So, bringing your personal understanding of the world to better understand those you serve and create, some type of legal framework or policy that will relieve, whatever discomforts that they are experiencing. It takes a ton of creativity, and creative leaders, bring things to the table that maybe other people's overlook. And so being yourself in this space and bringing your own understanding of the world and your own creativity, it's an inspiration, it's innovation, and it's necessary. I'd also say that negotiation, good negotiators can show fairness and empathy and critical reasoning and confidence. I think those are some of the things that you're going to learn in the MSL program. You have to be able to assess another person's point of view, what they're negotiating. And I think that's a big part of what you'll learn in your negotiations classes, is understanding, what you're trying to get out of a situation, what your interests are, what your position is, what their interests are, what their position is, where you have room, or what your leverage is in the situation, in the negotiation is, what their leverage is, and understanding both sides of the interest and positionality in a negotiation. So you'll get really deep and wide in how to manage that process. And that's something you're going to learn every single day in life, whether it be talking with a loved one and trying to get them to support you in what you're doing, to crafting public policy around a really important issue here in the legislature, or getting a budget bill passed. At every level of your life, you're going to have to figure out what matters to the other person, what are their interests, what are yours, and can we get towards an interest-based agreement? Otherwise, people will secretly plan your demise and you won't last long. And maybe not secretly plan your demise, and you won't last long. It'll be quite loud. And so, yeah, it's working with people. It's understanding that we may agree to disagree, and we have to figure out where we'll walk away, and maybe but preserve the relationship for other negotiations. And I think a big time, in a big way, in the legislature, I think folks really do agree, across party lines and whatnot, different, regional, experiences that might, make it such that people see things differently. I think we all want, good schools for our students, We want a healthy economy. We want, healthy communities. I think it's just how we get there, and recognizing, that we both have the same interests, it's just maybe different positionalities. So negotiation's a huge one. And I think those are all things that I learned in the classroom at a very deep level, and in a very effective way that I've been able to use in the work that I do, and that I also have helped the fellows kind of understand along the way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell the students, because I advise them, I'm like, negotiations is a great course, regardless of your concentration, because we all do it all day long, regardless of what you're doing.
Yes,
And I think it's like a skill that you don't really realize that even if you think you're good at it, there's still things you can learn that you might not have thought of. I took it as a JD student and I loved it. And
I
I still
loved
use
it.
those skills today.
I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, even if you're just negotiating a pay increase, right? It's gonna come into, I mean, much less a parking ticket or something like that, right? But no, it's really trying to get down into what matters most, and expanding the table, making, a lot of what we do around here is making sure that as we're building our stakeholder efforts, right, as legislators are trying to gather momentum and support from their communities, that they have the right people at the table. And so
Yeah.
expanding the table is a big thing, and recognizing kind of how you have healthy negotiations is establishing a set of rules, and not just outcome satisfaction, but procedural satisfaction. So I talk a
Mhm.
lot with the fellows about that, and with staff and new staff, and learning kind of the art of engagement, and maintaining a healthy relationship as you go through the hardships of negotiation as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so next question. What challenges do professionals in government and policy face today, and how do you think an MSL equips them to address these challenges?
Um, a big one that I see for a lot of folks coming into the legislature would be sort of lack of writing skills, and applied learning skills. So I think oftentimes coming fresh out of college, or with no in the building, we say in the Capitol experience, folks will have a ton of theoretical understanding of politics or society, which is an important part of the learning experience. They'll write, 30-page papers. And again, as I mentioned to you earlier, it's about the one-page briefing or
Mhm.
analysis, right? Cut to the chase. And, bottom line up front, what facts matter most, right? And so I think it's learning how to write in this space and adapt to the needs of the audience in this space. As we're creating
Mhm.
legislation, it needs to be steeped in certain facts, as well as certain bits of information, but not all of the information, because there are attention spans that are very short because of the amount of work that gets done here, or the members themselves, in terms of just what they've got on their plate. So I think the lack of writing skills are an issue that I see from a lot of new employees. But it's something that we could always get more. So if you're already here, you're already working in a professional environment or a political environment, I wish I could write better. I think that's excellent. Go for it with the MSL program, because your skills are going to take off when you start to writing a legal analysis, which is a kind of the far end of what you need to also have. So there's that theoretical, and then there's that legal analysis, and then here it's somewhere more so in the middle, or maybe towards the legal analysis side of things. But I think when you write a legal analysis, you're often not putting forth your position. You are backing up each statement with a citation or something like that. And so I think that's really important to have that skill set and that background. Of course, you'll then need to change your writing a little bit. Here, we don't cite in the legislature in our analysis very much, but it's important to have that skill set. So lack of writing and applied learning skills, super, super important. That's why a lot of the pipelines into the legislature, such as the fellows program, and some of the internship opportunities that present themselves are super important because you're going to get hands-on experience working in the body, learning some of these skills. But there's really nothing to it but to do it. You will learn, you get in, and you'll get mentorship and support inside the Capitol. Your office will teach you and help you grow in that way. But it's that applied learning of how to research, how to communicate effectively. Every form of legislation that passes is written in a durable, it's drafted and it's written in a very durable manner. It goes through several iterations. And so all along, even if it's emails and texts, you are writing in such a way that is effective and part of this, cultural institution is the way we do things. But if you have an MSL degree or a legal background, the writing that you do will be that much more precise and effective for your audience and durable. So I think that those are things that if you are seeking an opportunity to go back and sharpen your writing skills, that would be something that you'd get out of it. You would be a very good communicator, both written and verbal, once you come out of the MSL program. And that's something that we need more in the legislature.
Thank you. What advice would you give to public sector professionals who are contemplating an MSL to advance their careers?
Yeah, I think really take a look at what you want to do on the policy side. I think McGeorge offers sort of an unparalleled experience of legal skills, legal teaching, as well as policy. The practitioners there are top of the line, and so really do your research and figure out. Don't go back to school to figure out what you want to do. I think go back to school saying, I'm really passionate about water and I really want to get into water law, because you're going to get all of the policy and more to be effective, but you really want to be passionate, I think, a little bit about what you're going back to school for, especially with the MSL program, because you can, aside from I think you have a core class that you have to take, but you also have a lot of flexibility to take other classes. And so, I was interested in property law and I was interested in election law for personal reasons. One, I'm in the political sphere and I've run campaigns, and I was really interested in that. But I was, I'm a property owner and a landowner, and I really wanted to know a lot more about that. So I think be passionate about kind of the issues that you're interested in. Look at McGeorge with that lens, and it'll be a great experience for you.
Okay, so last question. Looking towards the future, how do you envision the role of MSL educated professionals evolving the landscape of government law and policy?
I think we have less attorneys working, at least in the legislative branch. Based on my analysis, I think over time that has evolved in a lot of ways. I think having a legal background and experience working in law translates to better legislation. And I think MSL educated professionals will make better legislation. I think they'll take into consideration, one, their understanding of the law, but also they will apply their research and communication skills in ways that I think will translate to better and longer lasting, more durable forms of legislation. I think it's really great to understand, the rule of law as well as, legislative intent, and you'll be a part of understanding all of it and bringing all of it together in drafting responsible public policy for all. And so I think that's, something that we could always use more of is more precise language, in terms of the drafting of legislation, such to make it more durable over time. And I think we could always use more analytical, and law school students tend to be a lot more analytical, so research-based decision making in this environment, I think is always a plus. And so I think that's one or two of the things that MSL educated professionals will help our landscape in the legislature evolve over time in a positive
Great. Cool. Well, thank you for answering my questions. If you just want to hang around in case somebody has questions for you, I'm just going to quickly run through kind of our program and just address a couple, like a little bit of information on the concentration. If I can get my mouse to work. Okay, so we have technically 5 concentrations now. Our business law is our newest one. It was launched this past fall. Our 3 fully online are going to be government law and policy, water and environmental law, and our business law concentration. Then we have 2 hybrid, which is in human resources and health law. So that's going to be a little bit more a combination of your first semester is definitely going to be online because your intro courses are online. And then after that, it's more up to you about how your schedule will be structured. Then we also have one that doesn't have a concentration attached, which kind of touches on what Jamie did a little bit, where you can customize. So you'll have your 2 intro courses, and after that, you are free to take classes in the things that interest you. Usually students in that, it's also more of a hybrid because they'll take some things online that are specific to our MSL students, and then we'll take some things in person, which typically tend to be our JD electives or in our public policy or public admin concentrations or programs. So it's much more customizable, and it's just kind of up to you depending on what you're interested in. So, because we're talking a little bit more about government law and policy, I just wanted to go over this one a little bit more than the other concentrations. So our government law and policy MSL was really designed for people who are either working or looking to work in local, state, federal agencies, kind of anything where you're working with policy, you're working with law, you're working with lawyers, because it is a different world that most people who got a bachelor's or a master's in something, unless it was in law, aren't quite going to have the grasp on that MSL students do, or even somebody that has a law degree does, because we do write differently, we do talk differently, everything means something. It's going to be different, which is where the MSL comes into play. Our government law and policy concentration is built on the foundation of the law school's capital lawyering program, which is a program for JD students. But our MSL students are often invited to their events and their webinars. You're welcome to make those connections as well. And it's designed, the capital lawyering program is a very successful program at McGeorge, and we really kept that in mind when we created this concentration. And then I'll go over this a little bit more, but the government law and policy, as I mentioned, is a fully online program. It's asynchronous. And despite it being online, it is also very interactive. So we designed our program to be as interactive as you can be online to keep our students engaged and to make it not feel like you're in an online room where you're doing this on your own. It can also be done at a part-time or full-time rate. So our government law and policy concentration, we do have required courses. Everybody has to take the first 2, which is Introduction to Legal Analysis and then our Analytical Skills course. Regardless of which concentration you're interested in, those 2 are a requirement. After that, each concentration is going to be a little bit different. So for government law and policy, and the other in the water and environmental law, you're going to have legislature and lawmaking and the executive branch and the administrative state. After that is where things are going to get a little bit different depending on your concentration. Obviously, government law and policy, we're going to focus on the government law and policy. So your next required course is going to be the government law and policy making course. Then in the summer, we have 2 1-unit courses that even if it's not required for your concentration, I always recommend students take them. It's leadership and organization and persuasive public speaking. Particularly the persuasive public speaking, I think, is very important. It's a skill that a lot of people either have or they wish they were better at. And even if you have it, it's always good to practice. All of us public speak all the time. Not all of us like it. I personally don't like it, but I do it, and it's a skill that, you can always fine tune and get more practice in and get feedback on. And then we have electives that you're able to choose from. These are just some of our online electives. We do now have more with our business law concentration. You also, if you're local to Sacramento or the area, you're close enough to drive, You're welcome to take classes on campus. There's also the public policy program, which does have some online courses that you're allowed to take. So these are just our electives specific to this concentration. So what makes our graduate degrees distinctive? As I mentioned, so we have asynchronous lectures. So we designed our online programs with working professionals in mind. So, you know, you're working, maybe you have a family, you have a life outside of work. So the asynchronous lectures, it's designed so that you don't have to log on at a specific time of day, a specific time during the week. So you can kind of structure it around what you need to do in your schedule as well as school. So it's not self-paced, but you can structure each week based on what your work life looks like. Then we have interactive weekly discussions. So even though you're in an online program, you do get a lot of interaction with your classmates and your professor. The courses will require you to post basically a response to a discussion question posted by the professor. And then you have to respond to your classmates. The professor often gets on there and responds. So there's a lot of back and forth. And because all of you are coming from different backgrounds, it's often a very interesting conversation with people bringing different ideas to the table. So our students are always telling me that they're surprised by the amount of interaction that they get because it is online. And when you think of online, you typically think like, I'll post a response and then I'm done. We want you to engage with your classmates and your professor. And usually you wind up responding more than once because it's a conversation that just kind of keeps going. We have ungraded quizzes, which allow you to kind of practice and see where you are in learning your material and check in with the professor if there's something that you're really lacking in, rather than getting to the end of the course and not realizing that you were misunderstanding something that was fundamental. So we want you to get that practice in without hurting yourself. Practical real world assignments. So most of our professors, they are adjunct faculty. So they are teaching, but they're also still working. They're attorneys, they're lobbyists, they're involved in the work that they're teaching you about, which is something that I think it's really great because you're not reading about, you know, being taught by somebody who did this 20, 30 years ago and hasn't been in the workforce since. You're learning from people who are actively doing the work, and therefore typically their lectures, their assignments are kind of related to what they're doing right now. So it's more up to date, it's current. They can give you real time, real world examples and experiences rather than just reading a book or just reading something that was done, you know, a long time ago that maybe is no longer applicable or not seeing how it applies to today. And it's also a really great way to make connections with our professors and with that world if you're not quite involved in it yet. So it's really, really nice. Regular feedback from professors. So they do respond to you via email. They have Zoom office hours. They're involved. They enjoy teaching the material. So it's just, even though you're online, you're going to get that interaction that you wouldn't get. Our classes are also fairly small, like typically under 20 students. So there's a lot more one-on-one with professors. Then a collegial online learning community. So like I said, there's a lot of interaction between you. A lot of our students actually are local to Sacramento or at the very least California. We have students that meet up on our campus or they meet up somewhere nearby and they get together. They do Zoom hours together. So you're still going to be a part of a community even though you're in an online program. Okay, so next steps, there's a link to our application. I know you can't click it, so if you just do McGeorge MSL application, it'll pop up. We are hosting on a different website than we were previously, so if you started an app before, you're gonna have to kind of redo it now. Our priority deadline is June 1st, but we do accept applications after that on a rolling basis. And then classes will begin on August 19th for the fall. So this is my contact information. If you don't have it, you can email me is usually the best way to get in touch with me, but you can also give me a call. With that, I'm gonna just open it up for questions. You can pop them in the Q&A or you can pop them in the chat. I'm just gonna give you guys a couple minutes and then if there's no questions, we'll just say goodbye. But if there are questions, please feel free. Okay, so I have a question. I would like to start in the fall, but I have a very busy fall coming up. Do I have to take a certain number of units that first semester? Thank you for the question. I always forget to mention this. So our program is actually very flexible with how many classes you can take. If you have a very busy semester, whether it's just your first semester or it's kind of an ongoing thing, our program is very flexible. So you can take just one class, you can take two classes, you can take three classes, you can take four classes. Our only rule is that you have to graduate within 5 years, which I've not had a student not able to complete that with their schedule. So in your first semester, there, like I mentioned, there's the intro to legal analysis, and then there's the analytical skills course. So the intro to legal analysis is only 2 units. So if you're nervous, unsure, busy, that would be my recommendation, is to take that class first, and then we can readjust and you can take more classes if you get more time. And then just so you know, if you guys do apply to the program, I'm the advisor for the students. So I work with you based on kind of what you need, what your goal is to graduate. And then I'm just your constant contact for that kind of thing. Tuition costs for the MSL program. So they're not listed for the 24-25 academic year yet. I'm not sure when we're going to get those, but for the 23-24 academic year, we charge per unit. So it was $1,500 per unit. You need 26 units. So I believe it came out to about $39,000 for tuition. But like I said, you pay per unit. So depending on, you know, how many units you're taking, that can change. But overall, it was $39,000 at that rate. What would be the hourly ratio for outside reading assignments to number of units? I don't have that off the top of my head. I will make a note to follow up with you. I'm sorry. I used to know that one right off the top of my head, but I just don't anymore. It's kind of, so if you think of like part-time jobs, 6 units is what we consider part-time. But I will get the exact kind of calculation that we use and send it over to you tomorrow. Are there any other questions? I'm gonna give you guys just one more minute, and then if there's no more questions. Oh, can you tell us more about the dissertation / capstone? So we do not have a dissertation requirement. If you would like, or if you're planning to do a doctorate program at some point and you would like to have a written final piece for your MSL, we do have a master's thesis option. We also have a directed research option if you just want to do directed research under a particular professor, which I have a lot of students who've chosen to do recently. But it is optional. But basically the way those work is you come up with kind of what you're hoping to write about research, you know, whatever you're wanting to do with it, your either directed research or your master's thesis. And based on what you're kind of looking at, we usually reach out to a few professors if you don't have a particular one in mind, and then we try to pair you with them. And then you work with that professor to establish how many credits your master's thesis, based on what you're doing, would be worth, or what you're wanting to do. So it's very much kind of on you and the professor, but like I said, they're optional. You don't have to complete a thesis to complete our MSL. I'm currently getting my biology master's at U of P. In your opinion / experience, would it be feasible to do the MSL simultaneously? I think that really depends on, I'm not sure if your master's is part-time or you're going full-time, but it depends on how you can balance your workload. I will say, and I'm sure Jamie can attest to this, doing the legal side of a master's degree, it's different. That's why I typically don't recommend that students take other courses other than their first 2 in that first semester, because legal writing, research, and analysis is very different from anything you've done before, unless you've done that before in some form. And so it sometimes takes students a bit to get a hang of it, and it takes a lot of focus and concentration to kind of, you know, get going in those classes. So I mean, you could do it, I'm sure, but if you want to send me an email later and we can maybe talk about like what the requirement is for your biology master's, I might be able to give you a more specific answer. I don't know, Jamie, I mean, you got your MSL. Did you go full time when you did yours?
I worked, 8 to 9 hours a day and then went to school. So I think it's possible, everything's possible. It ultimately depends on you. But you have to decide kind of, I think you're absolutely right, Kat. Your first semester, it's going to be a challenge, right? So the type of work that you're doing is, you're going to spend, you know, non, like non-sleeping hours, you know, at least until 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, at least for me, I was working on my on my MSL after work. Weekends, and I had kids. So I think everything's possible, but I married well and my wife really helped, and so made it possible. And so I spent a lot of weekends in the library. And so that's a lot. I think anything's possible. I think depends on you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, do we offer the first semester classes in the spring as well? Yeah, so our most of our classes are on a rotating basis, but the first semester classes and then the executive branch and the legislature's and lawmaking course are offered every semester because they're required for 2 of our concentrations and because we have a fall and a spring start. So we offer all 4 of those classes in the fall and the spring. And like I said, if you decide to do our program and you tell me, hey, my first semester, I only want to take 1 course, but after that, I want to do ABC. I can create a structure, like it's basically just an Excel sheet with kind of few different options of what your schedule would look like for you to graduate when you want to graduate based on how many classes you want to take. So it really can look like however you want it. You just have to let me know so I can make sure you stay on track. Your family has never heard of the MSL. How long has it been around? So I guess it's won a lot. And it's funny because I had actually never heard of the MSL either. I got my JD at McGeorge. I don't practice as an attorney, but I do appreciate having a legal degree. I think it's something that is useful in many different aspects of my life. The MSL has actually been around for a while. I think it's been at McGeorge for well over a decade now. Obviously, our online concentrations are new, but the MSL has been around for a while. Some other schools, there's not a consistency with names. So there's like the MLS, there's the MSL, there's like 3 other names for similar degrees. But it's been around for a while. It's just kind of now getting a bit more traction, I think, because you don't necessarily need somebody with a full-fledged law degree to do certain things. You just need somebody who has the skills, the legal writing, research analysis, and then, skills in certain areas. But you don't need the 88 units and 3 years at law school if you're not looking to practice as an attorney. But having a legal degree of any form is useful in a lot of positions, and it's starting to become, I think, a little bit more popular because it's more affordable and not everybody wants to practice as an attorney. I mean, I didn't know it existed, but I have my JD, and I think having that legal education is a really important thing, even in what I do for work as the assistant director of the program. So, and Jamie touched on it a little bit where it's like, in his role and in the Capitol, when you have that kind of legal writing and those skills already, it's not something that everybody has except for those with JDs, but now it's not just people with a JD.
I would concur with everything you said. I was deeply embedded in the legislature already. I had somewhere around a 14-year career already. I just wanted to make a change, and I needed the confidence and the skill sets to do that, and it worked perfect for my career. So I knew I did not want to practice law. I did not want to go the full JD route, but that there were elements of my, my skill sets that needed refining.
Any other questions, guys? These are some really good questions, I have to say. I got another one. Okay, so this one's for you, Jamie. Do people at the Capitol and that kind of thing, do they know the MSL degree kind of, they're familiar with it? Because I mean, we have a lot of MSL grads that either work at the Capitol or have worked at the Capitals, but you can answer that a little bit better than me.
Yeah, I think it's a known quantity. And I think, one of the benefits of going through the MSL program or going through McGeorge, however you slice it, is the network. And it really does expand your network to go through an MSL cohort. What I found for my network was, one, I learned about the program from a previous MSL student that I respected, that came from my hometown in Oakland. And so when she spoke about this new program, somewhere around 2012, 2013, I started to listen because I respected this person. I also know a number of people that have gone through the program. They are chief of staffs, they are ledge directors, and much more. And so, yeah, it's a respected name in the Capitol. More importantly, you get a certain kind of tool set that will make you respectable anywhere you go.
Okay, any more questions? All right, well, I think that's it for questions. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And thank you, Jamie, for being my wonderful guest speaker. It's always a pleasure. If you guys have any questions, please do send me an email or give me a call. I'll be happy to answer. And you can always also set up a separate Zoom meeting with me if you would prefer to do it that way. But thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks, everyone.